Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Georgie Cohen. I am co founder of Meet Content, blog resource and consultancy all about content strategy and higher education. And thank you for being here for the first of our series of free spring webinars. Um, we're pretty excited to be doing these again. It's a nice way to spend a lunch hour. I hope you have a nice cup of soup, a sandwich, maybe some tea. It's a little chilly out there, depending on where you are. Here in Boston, it's snowing, so I definitely had some soup for lunch. But right now, I am going to be delivering you guys some information about planning for homepage content. We'll have time for questions at the end, so please, if you could share them in the interim, and we'll get to them at the end. And if you want to tweet what you're hearing about, if you like it or if you don't like it, whichever, that's cool. But use the hashtag #MeetContent on Twitter, and we're also at #MeetContent on Twitter if you want to follow along with us there. So, um, I know that no one has seen this cartoon, of course, but I figured let's get it out of the way because we're going to talk about homepages. We're going to have to take a look at this, the SKCD University homepage comic. And, if there's one thing that this comic reminded us, is that we really need to strike a better balance between what we're doing on our homepages in terms of tasks and the messaging that we put there. And something else that this comic reminded us of is the fact that the homepage is super political. It's one of the most political entities that we're ever going to manage. And figuring out how to make that work does not come easily. The solutions are not readily apparent. And you might be tempted to think of things like this, or maybe your vice president thinks of things like this, that we have a website, we do XYZ on the website, but then we have a homepage, we do ABC on the homepage, because the homepage is a special magical creature. It needs to be treated very specially and whatnot. But is this really the way it is? Maybe it's this way, right? Maybe there's a website strategy and a homepage strategy. There's a little bit of overlap, but really the homepage still sort of is largely this totally separate, different, unique beast. Is this the case? No, I kind of think it works more like this, that there's really just one strategy. You have a communication strategy, you have a digital aspect of that communication strategy, and your homepage is the front door to your website, but it should be a subset of your website strategy. It doesn't require an entirely different approach. It might be different ways that you manage it, but it's not a separate entity from your website. What it's really doing is it's guiding people through your website. It's introducing people to the themes of your website, your messaging. And by that token, it's operating under the subset of what you're trying to do with your website as a whole. It doesn't require a separate kind of plan. It's all part of the same plan. And I think that's important to keep in mind that so much attention gets heaped on the homepage. Poor homepage, actually. It's just, a lot of it is expected of it. But I think that looking at it this way is a little more realistic and a little more manageable. But as we're going to talk about, it can sometimes be difficult to even assert this. We also need to realize that, for all the attention heaped on the homepage, more and more people are coming to our sites from paths other than that front door. And in a sense, every page on our website is a homepage to whoever happens to land on it. Right? People come from they get hyperlinks in emails, or they do search for things on Google. They come from search results. They get linked to things via social media. Web browsing does not follow like a linear path. There's not step one, step two, step three. There are no steps. It just happens. It comes from all corners at all times. You can't really predict what's going to happen. But with so many, new communication channels coming up, there's only going to create more paths by which people are going to reach our website, and we can't necessarily predict that the way that they get there is going to be that homepage. Jerry McGovern, in a blog post a few years ago called The Decline of the Homepage, he said that years ago, people might have thought about getting to the homepage and then figuring out where to go on the site. But now they will use search or external links to get closer to the place where they really want to go. So back when the web was new, I go to the homepage, I sort of explore it, but people are savvier now, and there's more ways to navigate the web rather than just going directly to the front of a website and figuring out things from there. So people are going to go around. They're going to do whichever way works best for them, and we have to be prepared for that. So if you're, paying all this attention to the homepage, you might not be paying attention to where people are actually coming from. The back door, that's like a homepage too. Even Santa coming in through the chimney there. It's not even a door, but they're getting in the house. So how are we preparing for those situations? The old mantra that every page needs to be a homepage has never been more true. This is from Bob Cohen, editor of the Atlantic Digital. So, I mean, these are the things that, and I always bring up this up, outside of higher ed, publications, other websites, they're dealing with a lot of the same issues. And this is the approach that, big time digital publications like The Atlantic are taking, is that they're realizing that and embracing that. It's on us too, because our people don't hold us to a different standard just because we're a university. People hold the web to a certain standard, no matter if it's The Atlantic or if it's, a university. So we need to prepare our web experiences to be responsive to the way that people are using the web, what they expect out of a web experience. So, over the course of the next hour or so, we're going to talk about giving your homepage purpose, executing a website strategy, not a homepage strategy, as we just talked about, how to manage that strategic homepage, and everyone's favorite topic, carousels, because we can't talk about homepages without talking about carousels, right? All right, so we are going to start by talking about giving your homepage purpose. Um, like I said, the homepage bears a lot of burden. People want a lot out of it. Put this link here, put this story, a photo of this, a photo of that, all sorts of things from all sorts of people. How many people have gotten that phone call or that email? Hey, X is happening, or X happened, or X is interesting. Can we put it on the homepage? It's like people don't understand that there may be other things that we could do with this item of incredible knowledge. It could be an event. It could be something we post on Facebook. It could go on some other, third level page that really makes a lot of sense for it. But people sort of identify the web at your institution with the homepage. So that's what a lot of people come asking for, and everyone wants a slice of it. There's sort of this expectation that if it's not on the homepage, it's not important. So therefore, if my thing is important, it needs to be on the homepage. Sort of the untrained people, that's kind of how people think about it. So how do we manage that, right? And those requests can sometimes be innocent enough, but sometimes come with sort of a sense of urgency around them. Please do this now, and that can be really tough to manage, especially if you get multiple of those kinds of requests frequently. So how do we really manage this when everyone wants a slice of the homepage? And as with anything, it starts with developing and then supporting a goal-oriented strategy that really protects the integrity of your homepage. You really have to defend it. It's your pie. I don't really want to take your pie. So there's three steps I think. There's deciding on the purpose of your homepage, which you might think is obvious, but maybe have you ever actually sat down, written it out, gotten people to buy into it? Articulate that in some way. Determine which content efforts best support that purpose. Once you have that purpose nailed down, how do we reflect that? What content is going to do the job? And then define how best to measure the effectiveness of those efforts. So it's a real measured process where it's thought through as to why we're doing what we're doing and how it's actually playing out for us. And then you have something to hold it all up against. And the foundation of that is really understanding your audience, right? Who do you really want to just dive face first into that pie that you're going to give them, right? And once you have that figured out, then you can build a homepage that's going to support those users, including the messaging that you want them to get and supporting the tasks that they want to complete. And then hopefully they'll be really happy and stuffed at the end of the whole thing. Remember again this XKCD comic. I think of this quote it was from a Confab conference a couple years ago. The homepage sends people quickly to content. It's performing fabulously. Amen. I think that's what that comic was trying to get at a little bit. Is that can we try to do that a little bit better? And it's important. I mean, people come. I always fond of saying that people come to websites with to-do lists. They have information that they want. They have information they want to get. They have something they're trying to learn, achieve, do. And we can't get in the way of that. One of the most important things is just don't get in the way of the user experience. Support the user experience. But this is us a lot of the time, right? We're sort of, screaming out to the universe, I'm significant. This is us and our messaging. This is us and our branding. We want people to see us, to acknowledge us, to recognize how important we are, how we're the missing link in their lives that they never knew they were missing. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do with our messaging. So how on the web, when we're trying to um, get people from point A to point B, or understand if people want to get from point A to point B, but all at the same time we want them to sort of get this impression of us, to learn something about us. While you're here, renewing your driver's license, come learn about these fabulous new cars, right? How can we achieve that kind of a balance? Bob Cohn again from the Atlantic Digital. There was a good interview with him in the Folio Mag that the link is to here. The homepage is the single best way for editors to convey the sensibilities and values of their websites. The homepage is, as the marketing team would put it, the ultimate brand statement. So the homepage has this great opportunity to really sort of hang the shingle out there and say, hey, this is us. Hey, this is who we are. Hey, I'm significant. And sort of articulating what that means for that particular institution. But the challenge is always it's going to be finding that balance between brand experience and user experience. How do we get that brand experience across, get that messaging across, have them understand the nature of our significance while not inhibiting them getting from point A to point B? Susan T. Evans from N Stoner, in a blog post a little while back, said that we want our .edu visitors to find what they're looking for, but we also want to subtly get in their way with useful and compelling content that is outside the scope of what they came in to see. I've often heard the metaphor used of the house, where if you come into the house, people they need to use the bathroom, they want to go have a meal in the dining room, they want to go out to the back porch, they have someplace they want to go in the house. So you want that house to be laid out and organized in a way where I can easily get where I want to go. I know where the coat closet is. I know where the bathroom is. I know where the kitchen is. I can get there. At the same time, you want a sense of the ambiance, right? Is this like sort of like cool and modern? Is this homey and inviting? As you're sort of going through that hallway, unencumbered to your destination, can you get that sense of, well, what kind of a place is this? What kind of a mood is being set? What kind of an attitude am I seeing? What are the paintings on the walls, right? What are the books laid out on the coffee table? What is that useful and compelling content that may not be the kitchen or the bathroom, but it's going to enhance my experience and enhance my understanding in some way? How can we convey that? This was a sketch done by Matt Klewitter, who works at Northwestern University, and he called this sort of what the ideal university homepage. Right? You want to here's who we are. We want you to give. We want you to what you're going to give to the university. Here's what you're going to get out of it. And there's a footer with some information. And in sort of drafting this, what he called the ultra simple, real authentic university website homepage wireframe concept, he says that when you think about it, this is all what all higher education homepages are trying to accomplish. And it's kind of true. It's kind of true. It's like we really just want to sort of say, hey, you want to do this, and but we also want you to do that, and trying to figure out that balance. And I know that I think it was Mike Petroff from Harvard, back when that XKCD comic first came out, he actually sort of wireframed out a homepage that sort of adhered to the concepts from that XKCD comic. I kind of want to see this post-it note put into a little more fully realized form, and those kinds of things are good exercises, even just as you're going through it, especially if you're in the middle of a redesign process, sort of just say, well, if these are the bare bones things that we are trying to get out of this whole thing, how would that look for us? And you might build from there. It's rarely that simple, but even just sort of going through that as an exercise is helpful, because anything that gets you boiling down to sort of the core messages and the core things that you're trying to do, sort of stripping away a lot of other silliness that can sometimes get in the way of this, that thinking about those um, core principles sometimes is a useful exercise, and it's worth giving a shot. So here I'm going to go through a couple of examples of pages I think do that. This is the University of Rochester in New York State. And one thing that they do, which has been written up in some other places, is they have this Photo Friday series where every Friday there's photos from people in the university community featured on the university homepage. So this is obviously a great photo of like this the snowy campus, and as you can see, it's indicated that it's Photo Friday. So we have the brand experience where you acknowledge, hey, we're in Rochester, it snows. Hey, we have a beautiful campus, and hey, also we, our community is a part of what happens here. Here's their imagery on our homepage that was partly selected by people in the community. But you also have sort of this inobtrusive box that has event highlights and news information. You have your navigation at the top. You have your search box. So you have all those elements there. While also this, just in one photo, there's sort of a rich layer of things that are being said about the institution's brand, which I think is kind of an interesting way of doing that. So again, it's about getting people to where they need to go, but in the process, getting them some information about where they're at, and what they can get out of it. Oh yeah, and this is just sort of the lower end of the page where they also have the footer as well. And here's more information about the Photo Friday, where people send photos of university life and they pick the best. So again, it's a very personal approach to conveying that brand experience. Here's the MIT approach, where they sort of have this imagery in the background, which rotates very frequently every day, having a new spotlight. And then sort of this very simple, design where they have all these navigational elements, news and event on the left, and news and events on the right. And I think that the frequency with which they update the spotlights on the homepage is really kind of remarkable and interesting to me. Because there's a lot happening at MIT, a lot of different events, a lot of different research, a lot of news, a lot of different kinds of people, different things happening, and they really use their homepage and the frequency with which they update it to reflect that. Oh, excuse me, but they also, have these steady elements of the news and events and the navigation that really just in that sort of classic MIT cut to the chase way get people directly to that information. So here's a for-profit institution, Capella University, which very clearly sort of states their proposition. We are the most direct path to gain the in-demand skills and knowledge that help you advance your career. And that's sort of a consistent point statement that they're making on their homepage. And here in these boxes are the core areas in which they have programs. You have sort of these core navigational elements here, and there it is with one sort of bold image. And it's just not a lot else going on in that clear request information button. It's very oriented around here are the things that we want you to do. We want you to get some information, we want you to explore our programs, and a very clear, direct, consistent statement about this is what we stand for, this is what we're going to enable you to do. So it's a good balance of, we get you to the place where you want to go, having that brand statement, but also very clearly, here's the clear paths to the information. It's going to help you achieve the things that you want to do and get things done and learn about our institution as well. Bates College up in Maine has this very sort of, again, sort of in the same vein, the University of Rochester has very bold imagery. And we'll talk more about the carousel approach in a second, but very bold imagery that they use to support sort of these stories here. And then these fly out menus from sort of just those five top navigational items, they have some fly out menus that sort of superimpose. So, I mean, this bold image sort of resonates and carries through and supports the homepage. But you have the means to get to where you want to go. So I think that that is also kind of an interesting way of balancing the brand story, these images that sort of tell you what kind of institution it is, and sort of not overtaking that area with a lot of links and text, but you can easily get access to the navigational items. So the University of Notre Dame has gotten a lot of attention, most deservedly, for its approach to its homepage. And they recently redesigned their homepage. And what was interesting about this approach is that they really sort of decided to go through a long scrolling page approach. So if you go to nd.edu, you're going to be able to see how it's all just contained on one page that sort of combines a lot of strong brand photography with a lot of information. And one of the things that they said that they wanted to do and write when were writing up about their homepage redesign, one of the things that they said they really wanted to do was to really tap into that emotional connection that people have to Notre Dame. They really wanted to convey that sense of place. And a lot of the strong brand photography had something to do with that. So obviously here you have the iconic dome, the snow-covered campus, again, embracing their geography, which sometimes some institutions don't want to do on their homepage. If it snows, it snows. You can't really escape it. Um, but so throughout the page, they have sort of the news and the functional information of the institution interspersed with some of the more brand oriented elements. Nick Johnson, who is director of web and interactive marketing there, says that they launched something where the core brand is present throughout the entire page. He said he wanted the brand to bubble up and really saturate the page, regardless of what browser you're using. And Eric Runyon from Notre Dame has been, we're going to talk a little more about some of his work in a second, but in terms of responsive web design and Notre Dame really being a leader of that. Obviously, this homepage looks beautiful in this sort of desktop format, which we're viewing it now, but it also looks really great at any resolution for any kind of device, tablet, phone, large screen, etc. Um, and in building their homepage, again, I was talking before, citing some of the insights from the Atlantic Digital website. They were looking at websites like The Verge and other sort of news sites where there's a real diverse range of content shared on the homepage. So I think that in thinking about how we do our homepages, you want to look at other institutions, you want to look at your peer institutions, but again, look at similar sites that are trying to balance a range of news and information and events and branding and sort of functional tasks and all those different things, because higher ed is not the only field that's trying to strike that balance. I think that we could learn something from how other industries are doing that as well. Um, and also from the Notre Dame approach, they really took it as again, content first and multi-device. So they acknowledge that people are coming to our homepage from any device that we can't predict, so it has to work on all of them, and the content really needs to lead the way. So it wasn't a matter of uh, thinking through just the design of it. It was thinking through, we're going to tell these stories, we're going to convey these messages. The photography supports that, the text supports that, the types of stories selected support that, and that's going to drive the process. Going back to Jerry McGovern for a second, he said that too many marketers and communicators are destroying whatever credibility their homepages have left with customers by filling them with useless graphics and meaningless words. It's really tempting, again, because we almost have this nervous anxiety about the homepage because it's so important. So many people come to it. What are we going to put there? What if we leave something out, right? What if we forget something? What if we don't have that important thing? How will anyone learn about X if it's not on the homepage? But I think this point about credibility is well taken, because if that is our front door, if that is our main statement, we have a lot of credibility. But if we're sort of eroding it by creating a gaudy experience, if we're diluting the strength of our messages by having too much content, conflicting calls to action, having these sorts of things that really end up defeating ourselves, tripping over ourselves on our own homepage, and that sort of taps away that credibility. Again, we had to assume, because it's true, that our users are savvier than we give them credit for. We need to understand that they have this savviness, so we can't just put all sorts of things on our homepage, because people, and not everyone is a web expert, but people know what they want. They want a clean experience that doesn't get in the way of the things they're trying to do. And if we get out of our own way and acknowledge that, then we're going to be able to meet that expectation. But it requires us, again, putting the user first and foremost. I also want to reemphasize the point about a mobile, because oftentimes if we want to create what we might think is a compelling homepage experience through some sort of a graphic or some sort of emotion, or some not emotion, emotion, like some sort of a activity, a swishing, a moving, a sliding, some kind of experience such as that. We have to be thinking about is that behavior, does that support the content, number one, and is that behavior going to be supported across different devices? If we're just planning for a desktop context with some sort of a fancy functionality, a video playing, a slider, some way that content moves around, will that hold up across all devices? Because people are using non desktop computer devices to access our website. And you can look at your analytics and see just how much that traffic has grown over time. Every institution will be different, but I pretty much guarantee that every institution is going to see growth in that over time. So it's important to remember your user, not just what they're trying to do, not just what they're looking for, but how they're visiting your website and how we can best support that experience. And again, to the point about credibility, let's make sure that what we're putting on our homepage isn't really going against our intentions. Matt Klowitter had also shared some common complications on the university homepages. We might overuse news and event listings, again, because we're afraid that someone won't find what's happening. They won't know what's going on. We link to resources without context. On one hand, we might acknowledge that the homepage is not a place for a lot of text, but hey, this thing needs to go there, so we'll just sort of link to it without really providing the context around it. Might have large left to right scrolling feature blocks. And again, is that the best way to present that information? Lots of navigation, hover menus, flyouts, mega menus. Again, fearing that people might not find something. Are we missing opportunity to sort of give those key trigger words that really reinforce calls to action? Apply, give, visit, contact. Are we sort of shrouding those calls to action in words that might sound better in an aesthetic way, but don't really work well in a functional way? And then to that point, are we sort of giving things marketing labels instead of action oriented labels? These are some things that we really need to be concerned about when building our home pages, and there's a broader site structure to which our home pages introduce. Here's one example from the Community College of Allegheny County, where they have, I wish I'd done the count, but it's definitely 15 to 20 featured links here in the right navigation. You have a guy with his back to you. That's great. You have some text blocks in the center, but I think these featured blocks or featured links rather are really what get me, because I don't really know why they're featured or why 20 of them are featured, or what they necessarily mean. Online dean? What's an online dean? Appointment central? Appointment for what? Maybe if I'm already a student there, these things make sense to me, but if I'm not, which you probably think I'm not because you're telling me to enroll today, then I don't know what Appointment Central is, and I don't know what Online Dean is, or anything like that. So again, thinking about audience, thinking about making decisions about content, and not necessarily letting it be this sort of catch-all. Let that fear prevail that if I don't put it here, no one will find it, so I better put it here. Again, Susan Evans from Center saying that when you choose well, the campus community, parents, legislators, and other ancillary audiences will also be influenced by this content. Your homepage can offer points of pride for many audiences without muddying the focus on perspectives and donors. So I think that, a lot of times people will try to say, yes, our homepage is a tool for recruitment, and that makes some people nervous because there are other audiences for our institution. It's like, oh, well, what if the donor comes to the homepage? We can't just have information about the admissions deadline because we're going to exclude them. But I think that this point is well taken. If you are selecting content that may be targeted toward that prospective student audience, um, if it's well chosen, it's also going to influence other people. They may not be the target audience. The target audience may not be legislators, or it may not be staff, but it's still, that statement will still be influential in that you're expressing your support for the student body. You're expressing your information that's going to lead to hopefully recruiting a good class, and all of that all of those points will be sort of absorbed, even though it's not for the target audience. So it can be hard to sort of make that statement, say this is a tool for recruitment, if that's indeed what your homepage, what the top goal of it is. Um, but it's important to have that focus, because the focus gives you purpose. And if you don't have purpose, then it really does just become all things to all people. Um, but even focused content, focused on one or two audiences, can still resonate with others in a secondary way. Um, so I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of site strategy and not homepage strategy. If you're going through a redesign, it may be a challenge to get stakeholders to think as critically about lower level pages. Like, everyone wants to think about the home page, maybe some sort of other top tier pages, but people don't want to think about those lower level pages too much, because they're not as fun. They're not right there. They're not the most important thing, right? Because that homepage is the front door, and it's super 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 important, and maybe it's more important than anything else, right? But if you put all of your attention on the homepage, this is what you get for the rest of your site, right? You realize that it's all just sort of a prop, and there's nothing else there behind it. Um, you know, and a homepage has to be a full building, a full house. It has to have all those rooms. All those rooms have to have things in them that make sense. It can't just be a facade. It can't just be something that's going to just fall over it with a stiff wind, because people don't just come to homepages, people come to websites. And we have to build experiences that support that. Your homepage may be your most popular page, but if you think about the context of that information, it's just a fraction of your overall traffic. It's going to be inevitable that your homepage is the top traffic page, but what percentage is that of overall traffic? What about other pages that are sort of oriented around top tasks or major calls to action? What are your most popular sections? Do you have a popular social media page or popular news stories or your program pages, financial aid section, alumni, events? All those other things are really important as well. And how much traffic do those take up? So you might be easy to pull up your Google Analytics and say, oh, look, the homepage. The past month, easily our most trafficked page. But what percentage is that of your total traffic is kind of an interesting thought exercise to go through. Um, Sort of get some of that insight from some research that the user interface UIE folks did in thinking through the fact that homepage is only a portion of your overall traffic. In the one exercise that they did, they found that the homepage was just 10% of overall page views, which meant that 90% of users' time was being spent elsewhere. Um, I'd be curious to see how that stat works out for you if you do that. What percentage is your homepage of overall traffic? Which means that what high percentage are people spending elsewhere? Do you really just want to do 10% of your job? No, we want to do 100% of our job, which means we have to pay attention to 100% of our website and really think through the whole site strategy and not just a homepage strategy. But if my link is on the homepage, how will people find my site? Um, this is something that many of us may have dealt with at some point. But it's really important. Don't let tradition trump strategy. If something has always been there, and you're going through a process where you want to make a case to have it be elsewhere, to not have it be there at all, fight back with numbers. Go and do that research and go and make that case. Um, because people might think that that link on the homepage is really beneficial to them because it's the homepage, and because it's always been there, and all of their success today can obviously be attributed to the presence of that homepage link. But you never know, it may actually be impeding that unit's ultimate goals, and not supporting their communications priorities because it may be out of place on the homepage, and that by a token then also inhibits the institution's goals. So the proper solution needs to be oriented around what is this unit trying to do, and then try to measure that. And you may find that maybe the homepage is the right place for it, but maybe it's not. And usually the best way to make that argument is with statistics and putting things in context. The thing we need to get people to understand is that this idea of information sent, which is also sort of I believe Jared Spool has advanced that concept a bit. As long as people feel they're on the right track, people will click through the site until they get where they want to go. If you have that sense of reassurance that I'm getting closer, I'm getting closer, I'm getting closer, here I am, and they reach the desired information, that's okay. It doesn't have to be on the homepage as long as people have that confidence that they're headed in the right direction. Your homepage really should not suffer for the sins of your website. And if you're like the Community College of Allegheny County and sort of shoveling those featured links and quick links on there, it might indicate that the rest of your website is kind of a disorganized heap. And that information sent, that little pup there, doesn't really have a whole lot to go on. And there might not be a strong scent to follow. So, interestingly enough, some of the components of a whole site strategy are some of the components of content strategy as a whole, which makes kind of a lot of sense if you think about it. It's having a sense of what your overall communications and brand strategy is, of what you're trying to achieve, of having a message architecture where you know these are our messages, these are our brand attributes, these are the things that we want to support in all of our content efforts. To really think through your information architecture. So, you're building a whole site experience that supports what people are trying to find, that organizes it and labels it appropriately. That you have a style guide that reinforces the sense of voice and tone across the website so people have a consistent experience. That search engine optimization plays a part in your content creation so that, again, it's not just about coming through that homepage front door, that people are going to be able to find it wherever they're coming from. And even your internal site search functionality, being sure to, not neglecting that, and ensuring that that works to support user experience and how people might be looking for content or discovering content as well. Oh, here they all again. We've always had a link on the homepage. You can't take it away. Why would you do this to us? True visibility is actually site-wide findability. So that means building those conduits throughout our site that take visitors wherever they decide to go, whether they're starting on the homepage or somewhere else. It's really by measuring the effectiveness of those conduits. Again, that's critical here. That we can try to relieve some of the expectations heaped on our homepages. I think when you see a lot of those homepages that are just bursting with links and bursting with a sense of I don't really know what you should do next, it's because we're people are really trying to make those homepages work too hard. And at a certain point, there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, where it's just like, no, this isn't going to work. The homepage is important and it can support a lot of things, but it can only support so much. And it's going to be more effective if we focus what we're trying to get out of it and really plan strategically around that, so it's not overwhelmed, so it doesn't break down under the weight of too many expectations and too many paths. So, talking about managing a strategic homepage, content strategy often, actually, not even often, all the time, comes down to people. And as we mentioned before, homepages are really political territory. So, how are we going to defend and execute the strategy that I just talked about? We talked about goals and measurement and all this great stuff. How homepage is a subset of a whole site strategy. But at the end of the day, how do we defend and execute that? Three things I think. We got to compile the stats, define and share criteria, and clarify ownership and governance. So compile the stats. We got to figure out how content on the homepage performs over time, what works and what doesn't. Where do people go after visiting the homepage? How are people getting there? They come, how are they getting to the homepage? How are they getting to our site as a whole? How many people come to the homepage first versus who comes via search, who comes via social, or through a tertiary or secondary level page? Understanding how people are finding us and then getting around once they're here is going to contribute to our understanding of how best to support that homepage. I also think it's important, because we oftentimes we use that homepage as the place to make that editorial brand statement. Let's make sure that we're not repeating ourselves. Let's make sure that we're saying things that we want to say. So when you're maintaining an editorial calendar, which you should for your homepage content, it's also serves as a good historical document, so you know what you've said in the past. When did we talk about this certain subject? When did we put it up? When did we take it down? Where did that content come from? Who was the real target audience for it? What school did it represent, or what brand message did it represent, or what constituency did it represent? What are the messages and themes that that content contained? Because again, if we're just turning through content without having a sense of the history behind it, we might end up repeating ourselves, or we might not end up using it as strategic as a communications platform as we might want to. So I think that it's not just about editorial planning, but also about editorial history. So we don't just know where we're going, but also where we've been, to really reinforce the value of the homepage as a communications platform. And then there's defining and sharing criteria. I think of it as the Wizard of Oz is pulling back the curtain and revealing just what's making the gears turn. So I think it's in creating those criteria, you want to think through what are your goals and key messages, and what content supports these. Is it going to be news, events, photos, videos, social content, sharing media hits, sort of bigger branding pieces, links to other sections or programs? There's no one answer. It can be whatever it needs to be to get the job done. But by defining those goals and key messages, then you have some sort of a rubric for thinking through what content will support them. You gotta think through the balance of what you're gonna, again, the idea of the editorial history of what content represents. You want to whatever the balance is that makes sense for you in terms of the schools and the colleges, the brand messages that you want to convey, and then the schedule. How frequently do we update different areas of the homepage? What is the rationale behind that frequency? I really don't see a need to make these kinds of criteria hidden, at the very least from other communication staff across the institution. If it's you, or you and a couple people in your office, or you and your vice president who get this together, just share it. It's not really uh, sort of secret, top secret information. It's just a way for planning content. You're not giving away the farm here. You're not breaking an embargo on some news story. It's just the plan for how you publish, right? And I think the more that people are going to, that you share this with people, people understand. Understanding is so key. A lot of struggle and a lot of conflict just comes from a lack of understanding. The more information people have, the more understanding they can gain. I think that that's important. And share these criteria, share the process by which you arrived at them. It's not. I'm not saying make it a democracy and ask everyone to tell you how to run your homepage, but let people know how you decided how to run the homepage, and use them to guide those decision-making efforts. There's always a caveat that some sort of breaking news, like a major gift or, God forbid, a crisis situation, could change the way that process works. That has to be expressed and understood. Um, and you might also use a homepage, the way your homepage is set up, to reinforce investment in certain systems. Maybe homepage stories are driven by tagging, or maybe homepage event listings are driven by a certain tagging convention. I know I've done this in the past, where you say, well, we only use events that are uploaded to our event system on the homepage, because that's just the way it's configured. If you have some event that's hosted on some microsite somewhere that doesn't live in a university calendar, it may be, you know, every living former president ever is coming to our school, but it's on the university calendar. There's just no way for it to show up on the homepage. So you might also use these criteria to reinforce investment and participation in certain other content systems you have on campus that you want people to adhere to. The less of a mystery around the homepage, the less room for argument and the less room for interpretation. There's the idea of clarifying ownership and governance. Yielding control of your homepage to everybody results in it serving nobody. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have somebody who's leading the effort, who's really building their relationships with other people on campus, and has the support of the senior leadership to draw information and cultivate ideas that will inform the homepage going forward. Um, this is unfortunately a little bit true. Homepages are battlegrounds for nincompoops with big egos. If we had this sort of committee approach to it, and everyone just sort of has a share of or opinion about what it might be, is it really going to be effective? And I just like this shirt. Committee, a group of men who keep minutes and waste hours. I'm not sure how many people out there have a homepage that's run by committee, but it feels like it would be kind of a huge challenge. Carrie Hicks from the University of Rhode Island is super smart, and here's what she says about that. Homepage and website redesigns need, more than anything, vision, leadership, and strategy. A committee of disparate interested parties can't really provide that. A committee serves simply as a mechanism to distribute blame when people become unhappy. And I think that that's really, really accurate. Um, Another aspect of clarifying ownership and governance is process, which we talked about a little bit. Schedule and frequency, defining roles. If there's someone who you're in charge of the photography and you're in charge of selecting what social content we highlight, and you're in charge of selecting events, having those defined and having a workflow around them is really critical to ensure the success of that homepage. So we're going to finish up here by talking about carousels, which is a device that a lot of homepages, not just in higher ed, but other retail, business, a lot of other fields use as a way of accommodating multiple pieces of content in one sort of prominent area. So I was trying to get some updated examples here, but it looked like the EduStyle site was down. So these are actually what I'm going to show you are the nominees for the top website and homepage for on EduStyle for 2012. We have DePaul University, University of Nebraska Lincoln, Otterbein University, Langara, and Notre Dame of Maryland University. And the thing that all of these have in common, very different designs, but they all have carousels. You can see the carousel here on the Notre Dame of Maryland University site. They all use carousels. And web designer Brad Frost, who's been a real leader in responsive web design, says that he calls carousels organizational crutches. And he says that it's far harder to have an honest content strategy conversation and determine what truly deserves to be on the homepage. I really believe that because carousels are just kind of a political solution. It sort of absolves you from making really tough decisions about your content because everything can be on the homepage. You can just add another slide or add another window to the carousel there. So it's that political aspect which is troubling. But Jacob Nielsen and his group, the Nielsen Norman group, have done some work into talking about how just as an interface, it's not very productive. It can be unnecessarily complex. It can be unintuitive. There is the consideration of banner blindness, where people might not even see what you have in your homepage carousel just because of banner blindness, because it might look like an advertisement almost, and not content that people want to engage with. But whether or not it's a carousel or sort of, again, I imagine that list of featured links from the Allegheny County website. Um, I think that carousels play into that mistake that people can make. It just like, let's add more, let's add more. I don't want to miss something. We don't want anyone to miss anything. More is better. But it's not volume over value. It's value over volume. And the solution to our content problems is not to add more content. The solution is not more slots, more links, more windows on the carousel. The solution is just to publish the right content for the job. Um, Going back to Notre Dame for a second, I mentioned Eric Runyon, uh, who works there, and he's done some real great research that he has shared here on his website about the interaction on the carousels across the Notre Dame website. This is a screenshot of the first post he did last January. He wrote a follow up last July as well that you could check out. And the best way to know is like, does something work? Well, let's measure it. Let's see. So went through and measured a couple things: the number of times a feature was switched by users, total feature clicks, and total clicks per position for both the homepage and other sites on Notre Dame across the Notre Dame website. So this is actually from the July update that he published, and what it shows is that from between January 1st and June 30th of last year, almost 3.8 million homepage visits, and the percentage of people that clicked on a feature, which is 1.07%. And of that number, just over 80, between 85 and 90% here, and we clicked a feature on that first position of the carousel. You can see the dramatic drop off for the other four slots on the carousel. So, the important to keep in mind is that this is Notre Dame. Maybe you're different. Maybe your carousels are configured differently. Maybe you have a clearer interface. Maybe your content is better. It's tempting, and I'm tempted certainly to look at Notre Dame and say, oh, look, see, it doesn't work for them, or look at these stats, and we shouldn't do it. But it's important for you to know your own story, know the story that your own stats are telling you, and go through and get that so you have your case to make, and your information on which to base decisions. So I think that what Eric's research here, and it's amazing that he has shared this so publicly with everybody. We can all start talking about it and thinking about it. Is it shows that now he has a better understanding of what works for Notre Dame. Now we should go and find a better understanding of what works for us or what doesn't work for us. Some best practices that Eric shared in writing about carousels: compelling content. If you want people to go through, build up a attention grabbing, compelling content, and not just that lead slide, but consistently going forward. Don't overpack it. 3 or 4 features tops. And again, sort of like I was talking about, pay attention to your subject matter. What is it that you're saying? What's that balance of messaging and stories? Brad Frost also has some best practices to share with us. Have some commonality among carousel elements. Is it like you don't want to create a sort of radically jarring experience? Like, here's a touching brand story. Here's the financial aid deadline. Here's some sort of very different content. What is some sort of commonality among those elements? Don't make users load more content than necessary. Be sure to check how the carousel works on mobile. Make your navigation clear and obvious. Again, track, compile, share data, and do A/B testing if you can to see what works better. Usability.gov also has some good advice for us in terms of best practices for carousels. You can often build them so they advance automatically. Every 15 seconds it moves. We don't know how our users are using our site, so I agree with them in saying that have it be a manual advance versus automatic. Echoing Eric's point here, 3 to 4 features max. Being sure to align content with users' top site tasks. Suggest more content to users. Cycle items at random so that you don't always have the same content in that first spot. And make your navigation intuitive. And what I say is that effective trumps shiny always. There's a lot of slick interfaces that you could build or that you could adapt in some way, but people don't look at websites, they use websites. So at the end of the day, you want it to be something that is effective both as an interface, something that people can easily navigate, something that's effective at supporting the tasks that your users are trying to complete, and effective at supporting your communications messages. And that really is something that you can't sacrifice on any of those points. Those are top consideration, sacrosanct across the board. No fancy interface is worth sacrificing for any of that. If you want some more insight about carousels, you should go to shouldIuseacarousel.com. I just gave away that this is their answer, but they do link to some other research and articles written about this topic in case you're curious. So, in conclusion, here just a few points. Don't pay attention to your homepage at the expense of the rest of your website. The homepage is just one page. Is it important? Yes. Is it more important than anything else? No. It's just one page of your whole site strategy. So don't ignore everything else at the expense of that. Give your homepage purpose. Defend and support it with process and measurement. It's if we're going to put content there in that prominent spot, we need to make sure it's doing what we want it to do. Balance user experience and branding. Make sure to put your audience first and don't be deluded by fancy functionality. And that is that. I want to let people know that our next webinar is going to be coming up on March 4th, same time, 1 o'clock. Rick Allen is going to be talking about content templates for content creators. So it's going to be a really, really helpful, practical workshop that if you're planning out a redesign or you're working to empower your content creators on campus, this is going to be really important for giving them a great way to be involved and to create good content. So if you go to meetcontent.com/events, there'll be more information describing the webinar, and you can sign up and register, and the cost is free. So why not, right? This was great too. I hope it was great for me. I hope it was great for you. You know, hope you have some soup ready for next month. And that's that. I am going to see what questions we have here, if any. Okay, we have a few questions. Awesome. Let's see. Kim McDonald asks, how do some of those bold full page images translate to the mobile experience? Well, I know that in terms of responsive web design, images have been sort of one of the things that have been toughest to sort of wrangle in terms of how to make images work responsively. There's still a lot of, responsive web design is not sort of an open and shut book in terms of how it works. And I know the images are one of the things that they're still trying to sort of perfect. So I think that um, I would just go and I don't have it available to look at it right now, but go to some of those websites like Rochester and Notre Dame and see how they do it. I can't speak to the coding behind it, but there must be ways that you can serve up alternate images or scale images down so that they work on the mobile experience. They should. If they don't, that's a problem. It's not going to be worth it to have a great image at the desktop viewing level if it doesn't work on mobile or it doesn't scale appropriately. So I think that the answer to your question is I don't know. I hope that they're coded appropriately. If they're not, they should be, and that we don't want to have experience at the expense of functionality, such that it wouldn't work on mobile. So I think it's important that we, in planning our home pages and thinking through, yes, bold imagery would be great. Let's make sure that it works well. Steve Filipiak asks, do you think it's better for a site to be responsive or mobile compatible, such as a separate template for other devices? Um, I personally think responsive is important. There's an article that I did on Me Content where I talked to some other folks in higher ed about their responsive site redesign processes. And it's not about design, it's not about coding necessarily. I find that responsive web design is often about content decisions. And I think that if you have a separate mobile website, you're creating extra work for yourself potentially by having a separate site that you have to maintain. And responsive design, the whole principle just makes you think more about, well, I need to be concise and I need to be thinking of my users and I need to be to write content that's going to work across all these different contexts. So I'm personally a fan of have one website that works everywhere, and make the content decisions appropriate for each context. I also had written a piece which I could share a link to um, later. I wrote for a Link, the High Ed Web publication, which is sort of an overview of responsive web design, where I taught the folks like Eric Runyon from Notre Dame and Dave Olson from West Virginia University and some others talking about the approach to responsive web design. And one thing I think that Dave had said is that, in thinking about mobile and responsive, like those are real big buzzwords, but it's not about mobile. It's not about fancy style sheets. It's really those words are, people are gravitating towards them and saying, oh, we got to think about responsive web design, but it's really just an opportunity to talk about making better content decisions, making better information architecture decisions, and building experiences that work across devices. So I think that I'd rather have my site be responsive than to have to create some sort of an alternate mobile experience. Because if you ever go to look something up and you get sort of booted to a page where it's not the content you expected, because well, I'm going to make decisions for you because you're on mobile. I'm going to decide that you actually don't need this content. I'm just going to boot you to this mobile homepage. It's disruptive. People don't. I don't approach browsing the web differently when I use my iPhone than when I use a web my laptop. So we shouldn't build separate experiences by the same token. What are some other ways to drive people to important content without resorting to slapping it on the homepage? That's a good question. So I think the important thing to realize is that we have other channels at our disposal. We have emails, we have social media, we have other ways of reaching different audiences. So it might be a matter of thinking through, well, what's the best way to reach this particular audience with this particular content. And by the other token, there's about having smart information architecture that's going to guide people to where we want them to go, where they need to go. So I think that again, those expectations that get heaped on the homepage of being the standard bearer for everything, for all university at our institution, or for all news at our institution, all information. It's realizing that we have these other channels and they should all work in concert in some way. So how can you have social and email and the web and other ways that we have of getting the word out there support one another and take the burden off of one another, quite frankly. All right, I think that pretty much answers a lot of the question. Oh, here's one more question. What do you think is the single best thing that you can do on your homepage for SEO? That's a great question. I would say, to the point which I think I echoed from Matt Klewitter, of not having marketing speak on your homepage. I think that you can just be clear about the tasks and the those calls to action that people want to achieve, because that's what people are searching for. Like, they want directions, they want to apply, they want to do these things, because again, people are searching for the things they want to do. So reinforce that in the way that you're labeling things and calling things out on your homepage. Think through the action. Don't think through painting your homepage as sort of a tableau, like a scene, and that aesthetic sense to it. A website is functional, not an aesthetic piece. It has aesthetic elements, but it's a functional piece. I think that SEO really aligns with the idea of functionality and how people search for information and search for the things that they want to do. So by keeping that in mind, by keeping in mind the fact that like people are searching for the things they need to do, they're searching for their tasks, they're searching for specific information, and having the language that you use on your website echo that, having your links be descriptive, having the link text and all those elements, your alt text, all those different things that help reinforce the language is important. So I think that just thinking through it as that functional piece and not an aesthetic element solely will help reinforce that. Okay, I think that. Oh, another question. We have 3 more minutes. Any suggestions or tips on getting higher ed higher ups on board with your website content strategy? That's a really great question. One of the most important tips is just don't quit. Um, it can't be a conversation that you have once and then never have again. It's a case that you continually have to make. And Rick actually wrote a good blog post about this a while back called "Selling Content Strategy." It's always something that you have to keep on bringing back and making a case. I find that if you have you know output of focus groups or usability testing or analytics, because you might have the right ideas, but you're one person with ideas. What about the group of 10 freshmen, or what about the past 6 months of analytics from thousands of site visitors? Having sort of unassailable research at your disposal, statistics, can help you make that case a little more effectively, coupled with your own research and best practices and competitive analysis and all of those things. And if at first you don't succeed, try again. You come back in a month with sort of a tweaked approach. Um, it's also sometimes I find helpful to find the language that that person speaks. What are they concerned about? They're concerned about enrollment. Are they concerned about giving? Are they concerned about just politics or making people happy? Finding the in to speak that person's language, that higher up's language, coupled with all the other stuff that I talked about, sort of the meat and potatoes of it. Grease the wheels by sort of knowing what their language is. That might work. But I think the most important thing is that it's not a one-time conversation that goes well or doesn't go well. It's an ongoing conversation, and you might think you have it figured out, but then something else happens. You have to be, oh, remember this thing, and keep on bringing it back and bringing it back, and being the squeaky wheel, and being the champion of it, because no one else is going to be the champion of it except the people who are the champions of it. So you have to, find the other people at your institution who support that, build that sort of little mini coalition if you have to, and keep making the case and making the case, backing it up and backing it up, and having that conversation multiple times in case you have to, um, because it's the right thing to do for the users and for the school. So, all right, thank you all very much. Really appreciate you participating here today. And be sure to tune in next month on the 4th. Sign up at meetcontent.com/events. And we'll have a few more of these in the spring. So stay tuned. Follow us on at Meet Content. Learn more. All right. Thank you all and have a great rest of your week.